can see, Antarctica is covered by thick sheets of ice. In some places, that ice is several miles deep. This massive continent, as big as the US and Mexico combined, has for millions of years been home to some of the most breathtaking examples of ice on the planet.
Well, no, and that's basically how a glacier is formed.
But Antarctica's ice is now increasingly being threatened, and most researchers believe it's because of climate change. According to one recent study, the continent's ice is slipping away 6 times faster than it was 40-year lasers. They measure the thickness of the ice, how it's moving, and whether it's growing or shrinking. This animation they built shows a sped-up version of how the ice flows on the continent.
Help me understand what that means.
To put that in perspective, in the amount of time it takes to watch this story, Antarctica will shed more water than New York City uses every day. The warming that's causing this ice loss varies in different parts of Antarctica. Here on the peninsula, the long branch of land coming off the northwest corner of the continent, warming has been especially pronounced on the continent. While it's warmed and cooled at different times, this ice loss will only accelerate sea level rise, which happens for 2 reasons. One, a warming atmosphere warms the oceans, and warmer water expands and rises. Secondly, warming also melts ice and glaciers all over the world, sending new water into the ocean.
So ultimately, if we lose...
It grow out over the ocean and help hold their much larger glaciers up on land. They hold it back and not let it slide into the sea. 50 years.
Ice shelves are very important. They're essentially acting as bouncers in the bar.
The atmosphere keeps warming. Major ice shelves in Antarctica have also been collapsing. In 2002, the Larsen B ice shelf, the size of Rhode Island, completely disintegrated. These are satellite images of it breaking up into hundreds of pieces. As predicted, the glaciers that Larsen B anchored up on land began accelerating towards the ocean. And then, 2 years ago, the even bigger Larsen C shelf, this is it from the air, developed that miles-long crack in it. This shelf, which sits in front of the Thwaites Glacier, is also crumbling. And part of the Brunt ice shelf is expected to break off any day now, releasing an iceberg that'll be twice the size of Manhattan. There's still some debate over whether human-induced warming is the only thing causing these changes. Antarctica has lost ice many times before, and that also caused the seas to rise. Researchers are now trying to determine how much warmth it takes to cause truly catastrophic sea level rise. That massive glacier that you see behind...
And so scientists have drilled ice cores through the layers as far down as they can get, and then they analyze those layers.
Glaciologist Robert Mulvaney, that's him in the black cap, works for the British Antarctic Survey. He and a small team have been drilling over 2,000 feet down into the ice sheet and pulling out these ice cores.
What we've been trying to do is recover a climate record of the last glacial cycle, so the last 120 to 140,000 years, to try to understand how our climate might change over the next 100 years or so as the climate responds to increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
The evidence from these cores and many others indicate that when the Earth's climate was just a little bit warmer than it is today, the world's oceans were over 20 feet higher.
So 120,000 years ago, when the climate was probably 2 degrees warmer than today, and sea level was maybe 6 to 9 meters higher than today.
Given the uncertainties over how serious sea level rise will be and over what time span it'll occur, Michael Oppenheimer argues that there's still time to act and to prepare.
Doesn't mean we should all throw up our hands and run. Let's start thinking straight. Let's start thinking fast about how we're going to help people, how we're going to help settlements, how we're going to help countries deal with the outcome, because a lot of it is not going to be pretty. It's going to be expensive and it's going to be disruptive if we don't get our act together now.
This year, teams from several different nations are studying the Thwaites Glacier, trying to determine whether it's past the point of no return, and if so, how soon its ice